Hello there, my name is Beth Gaff and I am the Media Literacy Coordinator here at the Peabody Public Library, and I want to first congratulate you for taking the steps needed to take to better educate yourself on some software that's used on a regular basis. And just to let you know that if you are part of the Incentive Computer Class Pass program, then there is a code within this class, so make sure I get that information so you can get credit for the class and start to be on your way for prizes. If you're not familiar with this program, please get in contact with me so I can let you know how you can also start to be on your way to creating some great prizes for yourself, and not only the knowledge you're going to gain from being a part of all the computer classes that are offered to you through the Peabody Public Library. So I just want to let you know that as you go through this class, it's geared to go at your pace, which means that you can take it as slow as you want, you can go as fast as you want, and actually throughout the class I'm going to be asking you to minimize this so you can apply some of the functions and actions that I'm asking you to do so you have a better understanding of how to use the program. So without further ado, I want to welcome you to Microsoft Excel Intermediate. Just like any other class, you're going to hear some terms today that you may or may not be familiar with. So this is just kind of a little briefing on some of the terms that you may be hearing. If you have not taken the Microsoft Excel Basic class, you might want to before actually taking this class, because the terms that we're going to be hearing within this class also reflect that class. So the terminology is going to be just a tad bit different. I didn't include all of them into the Excel Intermediate, so if you have questions about terminology, please refer to the Excel Basic class as well for that terminology. So we're going to start off with accents, and this is a variation on a theme color. A border is a line that prints along the side of a table cell or around the outside of selected text. Conditional format, this is a setting that applies formatting only when a cell's value meets a specified condition. Custom color, this is a color you specify as a mixture of red, blue, and green color values, which makes available 17.7 million custom colors, more than the eye can distinguish. That's a lot of colors. And font, a set of characters that uses the same typeface, style, and size. Your font size, that's determined by the point size, which is the unit of measurement, equal or approximately to 1/72 of an inch. And the font style, this is various ways that fonts can be displayed, such as a regular, italic, bold, bold italic, or a special attribute applies to the characters of a font. And formatting, this is to change the appearance, not the data of a workbook, but more so the appearance. Some more terms that you might be hearing as the class goes on today is a table, and this is a collection of data arranged in rows and columns. You have a page break. This is a location in a workstation that determines where a new page will begin. Your print area, this is a selected portion of a worksheet to be printed. Your style, this is a saved collection of formatting options, number formats, text alignment, font sizes and colors, borders, background fills. This can be applied to cells in a worksheet. A table style is a setting that applies style to 4 table elements. Your header row, first column, last column, and total rows. A theme is a design collection of formatting options that includes colors, graphics, and background images. Theme color, the 12 colors that belong to a workbook theme. And your theme font, and this is a font associated with a particular design theme and used for headings and body text. Again, if there are terms throughout this class that you're just not very familiar with, you might want to refer back to the Excel Basic class where there is more terminology there listed for you. And of course your dictionary or dictionary.com would work just as well if you wanted to find out some terms that are being said that you may not know the meaning to. So getting started with Excel, we need to first know what the parts of Excel are. Also, just to let you know that this class is somewhat lengthy, but it's very, very detailed. So you're definitely going to understand or learn something that you did not know before you started this. So this is just kind of a brief review of the parts of Excel. And if you took Excel Basic, then you are already familiar with the parts of Excel, but I just wanted to have a slide in here just to kind of brief you on it. So go ahead and just take a look at the parts of Excel and compare that to your workbook in Excel, and just notice all of the different features that Excel has to offer. So the next thing that we need to talk about after we've learned some of the parts of Excel is how we can actually open and get into Excel. I do talk a lot about this in Microsoft Excel Basic, so this is just kind of a quick overview of how, again, we can get into Excel, and I have here a couple of different ways that you can do that. The first way is to the left there, and we see the Microsoft Office folder, and I have it circled with a red there. Just by double clicking that, we're going to get a menu that's going to have all the programs of Microsoft Office in it, and then we can go to Excel, double click, and boom, we are into Excel, and we've already began a workbook. So that middle one there also lets you know that if you go to your start menu and to your all programs, you can either click that all programs or just put your mouse on top of it. Either way, it's going to pull up another menu, and to the right there, that right picture, you would want to use your scroll bar, which is circled, and just kind of scroll down till you find Microsoft Office and click on that. You're going to get that same kind of menu that you would have gotten had you done it the first pictures way. And then you would pick Excel, double click, and again you are into Excel and already beginning to start your workbook. So if you haven't had a chance to do this yet, go ahead and stop the video now and go into your Excel and try the different ways and see which one's going to work best for you on being able to get into Excel. Go ahead, give it a try. So now we're going to talk about what the whole point of Excel is. And Microsoft Excel is set up for data and data purposes. And this particular slide that we're seeing here, this is your active cells and your cells, as well as what some of those features within your workbook mean. And for this example, we can see that the active cell is going to be the one that we have pushed, and it's actually going to be highlighted in a black outline, and we can see that in the upper left hand corner of our picture that it is an A1, and above that is our name box, and I have a circle around it, and that tells us that that's where our active cell is. It's an A1. Now if we moved it and we pushed it into G8, then our name box there would then say G8 and not A1, but it would be our active cell. Now whatever cell you click into and it highlights in that bold black is your active cell, which also means where you have started from. So as we can see here in this picture, we have our worksheet tabs. Microsoft Excel automatically gives you 3 worksheet tabs to start with. If you need additional sheets, you can see that next to sheet 3 is another type of tab. If you push on that, you're going to get a sheet 4 and then a sheet 5 and so on and so forth. And what determines how many sheets you can have is just dependent upon how much memory you have in your computer. So if you have a lot of memory, then you can just keep on creating as many sheets as you would like, as well as workbooks. We are in book 1 because we've just opened it and it's pretty much brand new to us. But we can also see the columns and the rows, and that picture shows us that there. So go ahead right now and just get into Excel if you haven't done so yet, and go ahead and click into some of those cells. Each one of those rectangular boxes are called cells. The only thing that makes it active is by you pushing into it. So once you push into it and you have a highlighted black box around it, that's your active cell, or it is your starting point. And it'll always let you know your starting point in that name box, which is above that A column, every time. So go ahead right now and just kind of play around with where you want your active cell to be, and take a look at your columns and your rows and those different worksheets that are offered to you. So like I was telling you before, the main purpose for Excel is for data entry. And this particular slide is just an example of a particular kind of data entry that this person has chosen to do. And we can also notice that in our title bar, which is at the very, very top there next to Excel, Microsoft Excel, they've actually saved this at some point because it no longer says Book 1 and it says Sheet Panel. So they've actually gone in and they have saved their work and renamed it. And that's something that we're going to be doing here after a while. But I just wanted you to take a look at different kinds of data entry that can be done, and in this particular situation they're using a lot of different numbers for their data entry. So just kind of take a quick look at this just so you can kind of get familiar with some of the things that we're going to be doing throughout the class. If you have a computer class pass, the code for your computer class pass is Excel Intermediate 2014. Please let me know your code pass so I can get you marked down for your class. So now that you've had the opportunity to take a look at what entering data is all about and how we're going to be using Excel, we're actually going to start to enter in our own data now into your own Excel workbook. And so what I want you to do at this time is go ahead and pause this video and just enter in this particular data that I have here. So in column A, you would type in last name. Column B, it would say first name. Column C, it would say purchased item. Column D would say amount wholesale. Column E would be amount retail. And column F would be your profit. So let's go ahead and enter that now. I also have our name box circled just so you can be familiar with that once again, what an active cell is and how you can determine what your active cell is. In this particular situation, our active cell is F4, and we can see that because they've pushed on F4, and it's in our name box, and that was after they already did our headers. So go ahead and do your headers, and that's that column A through F, and type in this data right now. We're going to be using this for the rest of the class. So go ahead and do that now. So we're going to continue with our exercise, and now that you have entered in the data into those columns like I've asked you to do, now we're going to enter in this data down below, and I want you to go ahead and enter it exactly the way that you see it on the screen. Go ahead, give it a try. Now that you have all your data entered, we're going to start doing some different things with it. This picture to the left is the data that you have entered, and that's the way that it should look for you right now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to do the spacing, and we're going to stretch out those columns. We can do this one of two ways. One way would be to put your mouse in between your columns, and you can see I have the in between circled to the right there, and you would just put your mouse on in between, and when you do that you're going to actually see this cross appear, and if you double click in between the columns, they'll automatically adjust themselves to adjust to whatever the longest typed out item is within that column. So just by putting our mouse in between our columns, and you can see that they're separated, and I have it circled for you, you're going to get that cross, and by double clicking it's going to self-adjust itself for you. Or you can put it in between the columns and you can left click and drag, and that's going to open that up also, and it's going to manually do it in case you want the columns bigger than just self-adjusted. So go ahead right now and minimize this video, pause this video, and go in, and I want you to adjust your columns for the data that you just entered for our activities today. It's probably a lot easier to read now that you're able to space out those columns and you can read the data that you actually put in there, so you don't have to try to figure out what it is. So that's a really nice feature that Excel offers, is that spacing feature where it automatically does it, or you could manually do it yourself. Now let's say that we want to go in and we want to do something fancy to our data, and we want to change the fonts, or we want to change the colors, or something to that effect. So we're going to talk about font styles and size within Excel. And the first thing I want to let you know is that, what we've already talked about. Every time that you click into a cell, it makes it an active cell. Only one cell can be an active cell at a time. And that means that that's just your starting point. So if we look to the left in this picture where they have highlighted and made that last name column a range, and that's what that is called. They have clicked into their A1, which is their active cell, and they've kept that left click down on the mouse, and then you would just drag it down until you see it all highlight. So you would start in A1, or that last name box, and we can tell that that's our active cell because it's not colored the same as the ranges, because that's where we started from. So if I left click in my last name column, and I keep it left click, and I just drag it down, the remainder of those will turn that blue color, and now you've created a data range, and that's what that signifies. So if we move on to the middle picture, we can now start to choose our font styles. So as you can see, we have a font pane, and that's also indicated to you in the left picture above the actual workbook or worksheet that you're in. You can see the font pane. If we click that little arrow next to that Calibri or whatever yours might say, we're going to get a menu. And as you can see, that menu comes up automatically for us. Now if we take our mouse and we just take our mouse and we move it on top of each one of those styles. We don't even have to click anything. We can just lay it on top. Then it's going to automatically change that font style right before our eyes, and we're going to be able to see several of them at one time. Now to actually apply that font style, then you would go ahead and you would click on that style. But just by having your mouse graze on top of them without clicking anything, it's automatically going to change that range, or anything you have highlighted, it's going to change it to make it look whatever that particular font style is. And you would do the same thing with your font size, which is that number next to your style. And you can push that little arrow, and you can see to the right how they've pushed the arrow and they're getting a bunch of font style sizes. So they've pushed 20, and you can see how large it made my range then. It made it very large. So I can do the same thing with my font color, and I can push that. We're actually going to talk a little bit more about color in the next slide. So most of this is just about your font style and your font size. Now if we look to the right there of that number, we can see an arrow up, and we can see an arrow down, or a big A and a little a. That's actually our grow and our shrink feature, which is going to do the same thing as actually pushing one of those font numbers. You can just push on the big A and it's going to make your letters bigger, and it's only going to do that in the range that you've selected. So if you don't have anything selected, nothing's going to happen. But if you go ahead and you left click on whatever it is you want to change and you drag it, you now have a range. So go ahead and play around with your fonts a little bit using your font pane and any of those features within your font. Of course, if you push on that big bolded B, you're going to get your letters bolded, or the I is going to italicize them, and your U would underline them. So don't be afraid. You can't mess anything up at this point. Just play around with the font style, the font sizes, and see how you can make your particular worksheet look a little bit different than it did before. So now you should have a little bit better understanding of font style and sizes, and how you can make them bigger and smaller, and how you can change the appearance. So now we're going to talk a little bit about font colors and highlights and what you can use them for. In that left picture, we can see that we actually have our range selected, and instead of doing that last name, I just went with the names themselves, and that's why the A2 is now my active cell, because that's where I started from and that's where I began. So I left clicked on that A2, and then I just kept my left button down and I drug it down till I had all of those highlighted. And then I was able to go to my colors font, which is indicated in that right picture there with that A and the color. And when I push that, I get a menu, and I chose red. So by choosing that red, you can see that I was able to change just what I had highlighted, and it changed it right before my eyes, and you can see that there. And you can just play around with the different colors and highlight everything if you want to, and change all the colors. And if I didn't want my whole box highlighted in red, I could have just picked certain boxes and it would have changed that color. And you can kind of experiment and play around with that. It doesn't have to be in that range. You can actually just select certain boxes and it'll change the color. That picture down below just kind of shows you the highlighting feature, which is that paint can that's next to our font color. It's our highlighting feature or our theme colors. And the same area that I had highlighted, I was able to push on the green, and it now highlights my entire box. It also takes away my grid marks, so I'm not going to see those grid lines anymore. If you want to see them, then you may not want to use the highlighting feature, but you can also do it as a color coding type of workbook as well. So I was just wanting to make sure that you understood that. So go ahead right now and just take a chance of messing around with your font colors and highlight, which you probably already did within that other slide that we had prior to this, but I wanted to elaborate a little bit more on what it is exactly it does and what you can do with it. So go ahead right now and just experiment with your font colors and highlights. Okay, so now that we have this data and maybe we have done a little bit of the font styles and colors, and we've changed it around and we've made it look good and things like that. Now we're going to actually get into some of the details of our data that we have entered. So in this particular slide that we are going to talk about how we can sort our data. And what I want to do is I want to be able to put all of these in order by my customer's last name, meaning I want them alphabetized in order by my customer's last name. So first off, I would need to select my range, and I clicked in my last name. As you can see indicated in A1, that's my active cell now because that's the first thing I clicked in. And then I just drug it all the way down and across to get all of my data. Okay, and now I have a larger range than I had when I started. So then what I can do is I can go up to my right-hand corner of my ribbon, which is at the very top. It's that long stretch all the way across. And I see that there's a button there called my Sort and Filter button. By pushing that, I'm going to get a menu that comes down, and I want to sort mine from A to Z. So I would push the Sort A to Z. By doing that, as we can see in that picture indicated below, it has now put all of my data in order by my customer's last name. So Rogers is no longer my first customer. Angel is my first customer. And it's actually changed everything around so that I don't lose any of my data or any of my places. So go ahead right now and sort your data by going ahead and dragging your range, and that's left clicking into our active cell, and then we're going to drag it down until we have all the data that we want. And then you're going to push that Sort and Filter button, which is at the top right of your ribbon, which gives you a menu, and then you can click Sort A to Z. And by clicking Sort A to Z, it's going to sort all of your people and information from A to Z, and it's going to take it from that very first one. So we can see how it went from Rogers Chris to Angel Harold. So go ahead and give it a try right now, and when you are finished, yours should look like what we have right here. So that was a lot of fun being able to sort it. Now you've learned something hopefully a little bit new that you didn't know before. But you know, these are dollar amounts that we're dealing with inside of our data. So now we need to make them look like dollar amounts inside of our data. At this point, they just look like numbers. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a range, and again, a range is where we start with an active cell and we click and we leave it clicked down until we get our highlighted box like you see here, and Now we're going to start with our range, and we're going to make this currency. And there's actually a couple of ways to do this. The easiest way to do it is by using your right click. Right click is your friend. Getting used to right click on a regular basis is a good habit to get into when you're using Microsoft Office. It can be used on just about anything, anytime, and it gives you a menu option, and it makes it a lot easier on you. So if we just right clicked on our range, we get a menu, and at the bottom of our menu we have a button that's called Format Cells. If we pick that Format Cells button, okay, it's going to give us another menu. And to the left of that menu, we want to make sure that it says Currency, and we're going to see that in the next slide. And you would push on the Currency button, and then you would choose that top option there. Any of those features in red are going to be your negative numbers, and the features in black are your positives. So you would want to push on that first one and hit OK. Another way that you can do this is by going to your Format button, which is underneath your Home tab, and that's that picture to the right there. We can see it's next to the Insert, Delete, and Format. If you push on that Format, you can actually go down to where it says Format Cells, and you can push Format Cells, and you're going to get that box again. So go ahead and get your range together right now and try doing that right-click feature. Our next slide is going to show us a little bit better on what we're going to do next. Okay, so now you should have your range ready of the numbers that we're going to actually make into currency. And by right-clicking, you've now got that box up. Then if you go down and you hit Format Cells, you're going to get this box that comes up here. And this is what I was talking about in the last one. To the left, we can see there's a bunch of categories. You would want to push where it says Currency, and then you would want, I know it has a negative sign in front of it, but you do want to click on that very first one there and push OK, and I have it circled for you. And once you do that, then it's going to change all of that range into currency. Now, if you decided that you want that particular column to be all currency, okay, you could actually right-click on your active cell, and you could copy now because you have that currency in there. It's not going anywhere. It's a formula now that you've put in there. And then you can click on the, let's say the D7 in that top picture where there is no number. And if I click that and I do myself another range all the way down the column, then I can right click and push paste, and it's going to paste that $145 in there. But I can take that out, and every time now that I type a number in there, it's going to automatically be currency because I've copied and pasted that formula into those boxes. And by doing that Format Cells, when we right clicked, that's what we were doing, is we were formatting that cell to be nothing but currency. So everything in those boxes now will always be currency. So if we want that to continue down our columns, then we would need to copy that particular formula, and we would need to paste it into our range, and that would put that format in there for us. So go ahead right now and play around with your Format Cells and changing it to currency and things to that effect. Okay, so now we are going to take our currency and we're actually going to auto sum it up for ourselves. So as we can see in that top left picture, we have our currency in there. I want to make my A7, which is my active cell now, into a total box. So I would just either type total in that box directly, or I could use the formula bar, which is that FX bar that says total up there. You can type it in there, or you can just type it directly into the active cell. It doesn't matter, and it goes in there. Now I can hit that B in my fonts for my bold, just so it stands out a little bit more for me. So now I'm going to do my range again, and I'm going to select my numbers, and then in my upper right hand corner of my ribbon next to my sort and filter, I have a button that's called Autosum. If I push it, I don't have to push that arrow off to the side of it, just the Autosum itself. It's going to automatically sum up all of my data and put in my total wholesale amount, my total retail amount, and my total profit amount. So go ahead and type in your total and bold it like we have in that first picture, and highlight your range like we have in that second picture. Locate your Autosum button like it is in that bottom picture. And then in the next slide, it's going to show you how you're going to sum it all up. So here's where we're going to sum it all up. By locating that Autosum button and you push it, it's going to automatically add those columns together for you. And you can see that each column has its own total value at the bottom now. That was pretty easy, wasn't it? And you've also learned how you can copy those formats and put them into different cells. We aren't going to go into a lot of formatting at this time, but this is a very important format that I thought you could benefit from, because if you are going to be using Excel for banking or accounting purposes, you would want to know how to make your numbers reflect currency. So that's what we have done with the last two slides, is we've created these columns to not only be currency, but we've also made them sum themselves up for us, and we don't have to do it. Excel will do that for us. So if you haven't yet, I want you to go ahead and pause this video now and just play around with numbers and doing that right click and getting into your format cells, and then to the left where that category is, pushing on that currency and selecting OK for the style that you want, and then make it currency, and then even copy one of those cells and paste it into another one, so you can see how just by copying and pasting also put your formats in different locations. Okay, so we have done a lot up to this point. We've learned some terminology, we've learned how to get in here, we've entered some very basic data, we've used our fonts, we have actually created cell ranges so we can do things to them. We have summed it all up and we've created currency, and now we're ready to insert or delete some columns. So let's say that you have gotten all your data entered and you've decided that now you want there to be a date column. Okay, the easiest way again is going to be our right click option, and that's going to be located to you on the right. Just by clicking on the column that I want my new column to be in front of. So in this situation, I want my date column to be in front of my E column. So if I push on that D column like I did in that very top picture, and I push right click, I'm going to get that menu, and then I can click on insert, and just by clicking on insert, it's going to insert that column for me. Okay, and we can see that in the bottom picture there where it inserted it for me, and then I'm able to make a header for it, and I called this one date. So another way we can do that is actually through the home tab itself, where we saw that format button earlier. We can go ahead and click on the column that we want our new column to be in front of, and then click insert, and you can click on insert sheet column and it'll insert it that way as well. So you would do this same feature if you wanted to remove a column. So if I want to get rid of that date column, then I would just click on the column itself, I can right click and I can push delete. Or I can go to my home tab, and next to insert and in between format is the word delete, and that's going to remove it as well. So go ahead right now and insert yourself a date folder, or not folder, but a date column that's going to go in between your purchased items and your amount wholesaled, and just kind of play around with inserting and deleting your columns. So since you've had the time now to insert and delete a column, inserting and deleting a row is done exactly the same way. So as you can see here, they've pushed on number 4, which has highlighted my entire row. And by right-clicking, which is that middle picture, I get my menu. I click Insert, and boom, that right picture shows that it has inserted a row for me. And I can do the same thing with the Home tab by clicking on the Insert. And again, that delete would work the same way as it did before in our columns. So go ahead and just play around with inserting and deleting your rows the same way that you did the columns. And you can do both of them at the same time and just kind of see how it's going for you. Okay, so now we are ready to move on to something new, and we're going to actually insert some graphs and some different kinds of graphs. And this slide here is just kind of showing you where we can find our graphs, and our graphs are under our Insert tab, which is that tab next to our Home on the ribbon. Anything that we want to put into Excel is going to be considered an insert, so it's going to be under that Insert tab. So that would be a table, a picture, our shapes, your graphs, and things to that effect. If we want to insert it into our Excel document or our workbook, worksheet, then we are going to use that Insert tab. And as you can see, by pushing on that Insert tab, we've come up with a new menu option on our ribbon. And I see here where I have the pie graph circled and the bar graph circled. And once you choose one of those, then you get a new tab, which you can see down below in both of those pictures, which is now called your Chart Tools tab. And that allows you to even make it more glorified than it was before by changing colors and so forth and so on. So let's get started with inserting a graph, or a pie graph, or a bar graph, or a line graph, or even columns. Let's take a look at that in the next few slides. Okay, so as we can see here, we're going to actually insert a chart or a graph, and I have that Insert tab circled for you in that very first picture to the left, just so you know where to find your graphs or bar graphs or pie graphs or area graphs, whatever you're wanting to use. And then you're going to want to highlight your data, and that's going to be the data that we've been entering in this entire class. Okay, and now that we have it in currency for ourselves, and it's actually in order, and you may even have it all fancied up, we're going to just click that range. As you can see, I've clicked in A2 and made that my active cell because that's where I want to begin. And I've just kept my left click down and I've highlighted all of that area. So now I have a chart range that I can use. So in this particular situation, I'm going to choose a pie graph. So I chose on my pie graph and I chose the 2D pie graph. So let's take a look at the next slide and see what our results are from hitting that insert, highlighting our range of data information, and pushing on that pie graph. It put a pie graph in there for me, as we can see there, and we can actually see our data, how it's split up at the top, and it has a legend or a key on the graph for me to let me know who has what and what is what and things to that effect. So to that left is my pie graph, and to the right is my bar graph. And we can see that when we click on one of those graphs, we automatically get a new tab called our Chart Tools, and I have that circled for you at the top, and that just gives you more design, layout, and format options just for your graph. And again, anytime you want to know what any of these things mean on the ribbon, you can just put your mouse on top. You don't even have to push anything, and a little box will come up and tell you what each one of those little features means. So if you're looking for something specific, you may be able to just find it by putting your mouse on top of those different options, and I'm talking about inside of your ribbon. So for example, if I wanted to find out what the select data option was, I could just put my mouse on top of it, not push anything, and it's going to tell me. There's going to be a box that comes up that I'll need to read that will tell me what that option is. So to the right, we can see that that's a bar graph, and I was able to choose a bar graph, and it's split up a little differently. If I stretch out my graph a little bit bigger, then my words won't run over each other like we can see in the one picture. But for the example purposes of it, we can actually see the data before our eyes in a chart or graph. So go ahead and make sure that you have your range selected, pick on the graph that you want to use, and see how yours comes out. And we're going to be looking at it with numbers in the next couple of slides. Okay, so now that we have our chart, we may want to be a little bit more specific on our chart, and we may want just some information on there. Maybe we only want the amount wholesaled, and that's how much we actually have that we sold it for versus how much it is for retail, depending on whether they're a dealer or whatever. So on the very, very top there, we can see that since we have this new chart, that means that we have new chart tools options, because it gives us a new tab at the top for that. You can push on the chart layouts, and you can push on which one you want for percentages or dollar amounts or what have you, and see the differences. To the left, I have it where it's not only telling you their name, but it's telling you the item and it's telling you the dollar amount, whereas to the right, it's just broke down into percentages of what was going to make more money for us than the other. So you can just kind of play around with your graphs and the numbers and see the different options that you have, and one may be better than the other for whatever you're trying to do. So don't be afraid. You can't mess up anything. Nothing's going to be destroyed. And remember, anything you do at this point can be undone. We haven't saved anything. So just kind of have fun, and that's what this is about, is having fun and exploring Excel with graphs and charts. So now that you've had time to explore some of the graphs and charts, maybe there is just some certain information that you want to enter in there. So what you would do is you would highlight an area you want in your graph. For example, I highlighted columns B and C, and then I pressed Control, and I highlighted the additional column that I wanted to add without letting go of the Control key to highlight. So because the F2 was my last one to actually click on, then that makes it my active cell. However, you can see where by entering that, I was able to insert, and then I just chose a column graph, and it broke it up for me. So now I have dollars, I have the person, and I have the items. And again, you can just push on various buttons in there and just kind of play around and see what works better for you. But this is another way that you can enter information into a graph for yourself, where maybe you only want their first name, their purchased item, and the profit. You don't care about how much all the other expenses are. And again, the way I did this was I highlighted my area that I want in my graph, and that was by left clicking and dragging and making my range. And then I would push down on my Control button on my keyboard if I wanted to do an additional column. So go ahead and give this a try right now for graphs with certain information inside of them. Inserting shapes really isn't much different than inserting a graph or a chart, in all honesty. Again, because we are inserting something into our workbook or our worksheet, we would want to push on the Insert tab. And that's the same tab we used for our pie and our graph. Now we want to find the shape that we want to use. And by clicking on that Shapes button, we can see that we get a huge menu, and it even scrolls so we can see more options. For what I want to do, I'm just going to do an arrow. So I've circled where I found my arrow, and if I just double click on my spreadsheet, it's going to produce an arrow for me. Or I can left click on my spreadsheet and drag it out, and you'll actually see the arrow appear to you. It won't automatically come. You will have to draw it on there. So you would go into Insert, click on your shapes, choose the shape you want, and then go to your worksheet and either double click on the worksheet so it just puts one in there and you can make it bigger or smaller, or you can left click and just kind of drag it out like I did to the right, and it made it that big. But I can make it smaller if I want, because each one of those dotted points on each point and in the middle allows me to change and rearrange the shape of whatever I've inserted in there. Now again, remember that anytime we insert something, we're going to get a new toolbar menu option, and that's on our tabs. So we can see on that right picture, and I have it circled in red for you, because I created a shape, I now have what's called a drawing tool tab. So I can go in there now and I can use those features if I want to change the color or the appearance of what my particular shape looks like. So go ahead right now and take a moment and minimize or pause this video and go ahead and put an insert or a shape inside of your Excel. And again, we do that and we find that from our insert tab, and there's a shapes button, and we have a bunch of options that we can choose from. You don't have to choose the arrow. You can choose whatever you would like. And then you're going to double click onto your worksheet and it's going to appear, or you can draw it out by left clicking and just dragging it out, and it'll make it even bigger. But nothing's permanent. You can't mess anything up. Just give it a try. Insert a few shapes if you want. Until we save this, it's all still open, and there's nothing that you can do that's going to mess up anything you've done. Print and print preview in Excel are just like having it in Microsoft Word. If I go to my File button or my Office tab and I push on it, I'm going to get a menu. If I click on that print button, as we can see to the right, it's going to show me what it's going to print. That's my actual print preview. And you can see it to the right there with my chart and my data. And then I can just push on that print button, and I have it circled for you as well in the blue. And by doing that, I'm able to print out all of the data that I've entered, as well as the chart that I have inside of it. So go ahead right now and go to your File or your Office button that's in your upper left-hand corner of Microsoft Excel. Push that and go down to your print so you can see your print preview, and then you can push print and actually have your data on a piece of paper that you can physically see in front of you. Go ahead and give printing in Excel a try. Saving in Excel isn't any different than saving in Microsoft Word or any other Microsoft Office program. If you click on that File button and you go down to Save As, it's going to create a box for you. Microsoft Excel automatically defaults all of your workbooks and worksheets into your documents or My Documents. So here is where you're going to be able to choose your file name, and you can blank out that book 2 or whatever it's defaulted as and type in whatever it is exactly you want to call it. And then you would click Save. So then when you're ready to retrieve it, you can do that by going to your Start menu, My Documents, and clicking on it, and you would see your actual workbook being in there. Now that's your Save As feature. Whereas if you use your Save, once you open your workbook back up and you do edited ideas to it, then you can actually go in and just click the Save button instead of the Save As button, and your edited copy is now saved to the original file name that you had it at. So go ahead right now and minimize the video and just try to save your Excel workbook or worksheet, and then try to even pull it up, maybe do something different to it, and just save it and not save as something different. So let's give the save features a try. And again, if you've worked with Microsoft Word or if you took the Excel Basic class, then you probably already know how to do this, but let's just give it a try. Okay, so now we have come to the end of class, and you have done a fantastic job, and we are ready to close and exit Microsoft Excel. If you've saved it, then nothing else needs to be done. If you have not saved your document or your workbook or spreadsheet, then you would need to go ahead now and save it as something so that you don't lose this information. So when you're ready to close, you can do it a few ways. You can click on that File button or your Office button in the left-hand corner, and you can either click Close or you can click Exit, and it's going to take you out. Or within the workbook itself, you can close Excel by that red box or the red X indicated in the right top corner, and you can also close a spreadsheet if you wanted to do so. But here we're going to close out of Excel altogether, so we would want to close it out by clicking on that red X. So why don't you at this time go ahead and close out of Excel, and you have completed Microsoft Excel Intermediate, and you should have a great worksheet that you can kind of play around with and alter as much as you want to, and just have some fun with it. I want to thank you for being a part of Microsoft Excel Experience. It's a great program for a lot of different purposes, and we only touch the surface. But you should have a better understanding of the ribbon and its features and what it has to offer. So I want to continue you and encourage you to explore Excel. It can be very fun. You did an amazing job, and you should be very proud of yourself. Take a deep breath and relax, because it's all over and you got through it, and hopefully you got that code also, so you can let me know what it is so I can give you credit for the class. And if you have any questions, you can email me at understanding.computers@yahoo.com, or you can visit us on our website and just check out some of the other classes that we have to offer. And again, I want to thank you for being a part of Microsoft Excel Intermediate, and you did a fantastic job. You should be very proud. The following class was provided to you by the following websites: commentary by Beth Gaff, and exercises and screenshots were taken from Beth Gaff's computer as examples for the class.